Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we have some products on display for sale, and also I'm going to be going over some of the differences between the GT-40 style intakes that I have out here. These include the 1993 Cobra, the 1995 Cobra, the Ford Motorsport SVO for 94-95, and the GT-40 Ford Racing and Lightning intakes. So if I were to stop and pause and ask you to pick out the differences, there are many between these manifolds. I don't have an Explorer intake here today, which is in the GT-40 family. I don't really consider that a performance part. It's an upgrade from stock GT Mustang LX50 parts, but it is more often than not considered a junkyard upgrade. And I don't have the aftermarket produced 93 Cobra intake. I have an original Ford. So all of the items you see here today are available for sale, every upper and lower, the intake plate. But let's start with going over some of the individual pieces, and I'm going to show you some part numbers today and some of the differences that I know between these parts. There's lots of other information on the internet, in chat forums. There's other YouTube videos that go over the performance differences and the intricacies there. I'm not going to go over that with you today. Today is just a quick look at available products and some of the differences that I know. This is a beautiful 94-95 Cobra upper intake. As far as I know, this was only available from Ford. There was never a reproduction of this item. Let's get ahead and look at the part number. So for those of you who are looking to buy a GT-40 style intake, the part numbers are very important depending on your application. And matching your upper and lower together are also very important. You can see this circle here, it's actually soot. And that's solid. That's solid aluminum. There is no EGR flow through that upper. This is 94-95, which used a different system than the 93 and older. And if you are building a car or an engine, a Windsor engine from scratch, it's going to be important before you buy your intake to look at your final product before you start buying stuff. So there was the part number. The F4Z is 94 and newer Mustang. This is available as just the upper intake. Again, this is beautiful. Only I see one or two little areas where the paint is starting to blister, but it's not dirty, it's not stripped, it's not cracked, which just tells us that this is probably a well-maintained vehicle. Now, if you couldn't back in the day find a Cobra for parts, or if Ford stopped selling this manufactured part over the counter, what they did in later years was they sold more or less the exact same item in their performance catalogs and at dealers that were motorsport dealers or sold Ford racing parts. And this SVO manifold, I consider it a factory part. It's got a big Ford oval on it there, but it's also not a stock part. So it's factory but not stock. As far as I know, without busting out a tape measure or calipers or anything, I assume that all the dimensions on a manifold like this are going to be the same as the Cobra that we just looked at. I want to be real careful with these not to damage them, but there's another F4ZE. So that's a 94 and newer production. 9425A, looks like AC. (9425AC). That is interesting. They share the same part number, unless I missed something. But they do have that different plaque. So this was This is for your 94, 95 throttle body. You really, to the best of my knowledge, you can't, I don't want to say can't, you wouldn't really, this wouldn't be the first choice for a Foxbody Mustang. If you have some kind of a rat rod or other project, sure, you can probably find a 94 to 95 throttle body. I would then look into a 94, 95 throttle cable. But this manifold is available as just an upper, or I do have the matching lower. One other thing I did want to point out, it's like an EGR. I don't want to call it delete, but it's not set up for that. As far as I understand, I see that there is some kind of a valve opening here. But the manifold itself, you'll see when we start looking at some of the other ones, is designed differently. Lowers as well. Some of the lowers have that opening and some of them don't. Now we're on to the tubular stuff. Let's go over those. I'll go over them quickly. They're virtually the same. But again, if you were to take a stop shot or a screenshot at all, what do we have? 4 of these here. You will start to see some differences. Here's a vacuum tapped port. There's a vacuum tapped port. The one in the back does not have that, and the one up front here does. So these, from my understanding, were available. There are 2 different manifolds here. They were available in your Ford Lightning with the 5.8 liter, and you could also buy these through Ford Racing aftermarket. Let me show you. I got one finger on it. This is extremely light. When you get back into some of these heavier stock, I believe they're cast intakes, those might weigh 15 or 20 pounds a piece, maybe more. This one's probably 10 or less. Let's see if I got a part number. I don't see a part number readily available, but some of the major differences you want to pay attention to, especially if you want to get one of these intake covers, are the location of the bolt holes here near the plenum end that would hold that in. Look here, those 2 are right on the plenum's end, and it has to do with bolt hole alignment and what types of cover you can use. So that one there has them on the plenum end. This one here also has them on the plenum end. But if you look at this one here, it has little extension tabs there, which means that this cover plate wouldn't bolt on there correctly. So as you go shopping for your intake plates, I've seen a lot of good reproduced, or I should say manufactured ones. People are starting to manufacture them themselves with 5.0 power and 302 and all kinds of fun stuff like that. Obviously, I've seen some with the running pony as well, aftermarket. Just pay attention before you order them that there are different upper intake manifolds, which means you got to make sure you know what cover plate that you're buying. A little dusty today, but the cover plate is available. These are no longer reproduced. From my understanding, the M is motorsport. Let me try and get the whole part number in the shot there. So I've got M9E434A50. They're rare, they're sought after, and I would call that a factory part, being that it's from Ford or through the motorsport division. It's not a stock part, but it is a factory part. I've got one of these upper intakes today available on my website. After this video posts and I get a couple other requests or replies, I'll definitely be posting the rest of them. And I know there's other intricacies that I'm not educated on myself with these. I think there were 2 or 3 different tubular intakes available for either factory removals or available in the aftermarket. Real quick, for anybody interested in purchasing these, this would be the dark gray one. It's got some divots and chips and things in it. Look like they were there before it was painted. The Doesn't appear to have any port work. Once again, this is so light. It's almost uncomfortably light. I'm so used to having to muscle up to pick up manifold parts. Since we know we have one oddball here, I'll try and compare them, see if there's anything else that sticks out to us quite obviously. Well, I got a vacuum tap here, vacuum tap here. Oh, absolutely. So there's an entire boss here. I don't know if that's PCV or any other vacuum source like that. I'm going to imagine it's something to do with that. So I'm basically here showing you the differences because I have so many different ones to show. Unfortunately, I'm not usually the end user and haven't done all the research that you may do before you buy something, but there are differences even underneath them. Really don't see too much else that sticks out. I've heard other people say to look out for things, not look out, but just pay attention. Some of the earlier ones where the tubes are put on, there's some that are like pressed fit, there's some that are welded. So hopefully I can show some of the differences there. Like that looks like a pressed fit, I would say more. I really don't see a lot of slag or anything showing that one's been welded, especially when you compare that to, like I can see quite obviously on this one here. It looks to have a more kind of a rippled attachment there. And again, this is just for product display and a little bit of some education. We're both kind of learning at the same time here. So the gray one, I believe the dark gray one is the one that's available right now. It's going to do the performance job. A couple little dings here in the tubes, but nothing kinked or that I would suspect would affect the airflow. So here's silver one, number one. A couple little nicks in it. Very presentable. I don't really see any handling damage or sledgehammer marks or anything. The tubes here all appear to be very nice. That might be the best looking one of them all at this point. And I believe, I've looked at this one before, I believe that has been opened slightly. It appears to have fresh machining. Oh yeah, when compared to the one next to it here. Let's see, I've got my whole thumb there. This is just an eyeball test, but I've got my whole black painted thumb there. Fits. And this one, my thumb overlaps the hole. So this one's going to have a larger than factory bore on it. So we can identify, now we've got two completely separately identifiable for those of you that are interested. And with the remaining two, we've got this very unique one here with the intake plate extensions. That's the only one I've got like that. And this would be, I guess we'll call this bright silver one, number two. That's just got some handling scratches and things like that. So this one's got an EGR hole here where the 94 and 95 Cobra style ones did not. 12/28 of 1994. How cool is that? So if anybody has any questions, wants me to send them individual pictures of certain intake manifolds that they're interested in purchasing, or really if you just need my assistance before you do buy something, say, hey man, can you go over this again, show me the differences in them, I'd be happy to. That's a lot of the reasons behind these videos, is just to kind of educate people before they buy something. And even if it's not for me, you know, it just saves everybody headaches down the road. So this is a very unique one. Appears that's just a little paint chip there. There might be some rub marks. I know well, let me see if this is installed. wonder how this would install in a Lightning. If I know there's air conditioning tubes on a Mustang that go over the intake, and sometimes they rub away paint, even they rub away some of the aluminum. You know, this one's in decent shape. See a little ding here, so a little ding here, a little ding there on these tubulars. And now we're going to get into this 93 Cobra manifold. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen that there is still a 93 Cobra intake being sold, and one of the telltales everybody looks at is right here on the, I've heard people call them Chinese intakes. I've heard people call them aftermarket Cobra intakes. There's a lot of conflicting information out there as to, is Ford producing them? Did Ford license them? But if you see a plate right here, like a blank spot, and they did come with a Ford Racing sticker, like a foil Ford Racing sticker here, a lot of folks say that is the aftermarket 93 Cobra intake. Let's see, part number here, F3ZE9425CB. So there's an EGR, looks like EGR delete plate on this one. So that tells you that it should have had EGR. This was a factory part and a stock part to your 93 Cobra. But when you compare this to the Explorer intakes, you know, like I said, I didn't bring an Explorer intake to show today. That's a junkyard part to me. I consider a 93 Cobra intake. I mean, imagine this, even black with a brand new sticker on it. I mean, that's something we all recognize and respect. Don't mean to diss anybody that has a Cobra, or excuse me, Explorer intake. Bang for the buck, that's one of the better routes to go, in my opinion. But with the cars being where they are nowadays, I mean, really, I'm sure a lot of people interested in manifolds like this are doing more than just bang for the buck. They really want to have a nice look and have it be original stuff. Yeah, there's trick flow intakes and Holly intakes, and some of them flow better for the money than some of these aftermarket ones. Some of these aftermarket or these tubular intakes are getting pretty good money. But it's not always about performance. You know, people put $20,000 paint jobs on their car. Doesn't make them any faster. It's just the look. So there's a look at a 93 Cobra upper that I believe is a factory stock option, and it falls in the GT-40 family. So now that we get to the lower intakes, ooh-wee, are there a lot of differences. If I were to go through them all, we'd be here for another hour. But this is just a quick look. Again, this is product availability, and I'm going to go over some of the differences that I know about them. Now, if anybody can point out the 5.8 liter intake, you start off with size. It's the one, it's this one right here, is a 5.8 liter. So that's Lightning intake. It's aluminum. There were some Marine 5.8 liters that had, I believe, a cast iron lower, just like this. That probably weighs more than the boat. But the 5.8 liter is a great 408 351 conversion intake manifold. This one's got fuel rails, an adjustable regulator. It's more or less complete and will be for sale, or is for sale. I actually have all of these minus the 93 Cobra. I have a listing on eBay right now for all the manifolds in one shot. I thought maybe a performance shop or a rebuilder might take a bite on that, and I've had some offers, but I'm going to start splitting them up so I can get some space back around here. So I'm going to get in on the part number here, and before I zoom in, so other than the width of this intake, one of the easiest ways to identify it is by this tab right here. This tab is not on any 302 lower. You'll see, not there, not here, not here. So those are the two ways you can identify a 5.8. If you don't have two next to each other like this, you obviously can't really compare for size. But after you look at enough of them, you can kind of see how short the runners are and how snug everything kind of fits here. That one's, it's got a little more space and gapping and width kind of to it. The part number on the Lightning lower, RF-F2TE, looks like K461-AA. That's what it looks like to me. They are few and far between. Another item that's getting good money, I don't think were ever reproduced. So if you're looking for an original Lightning manifold, you're basically stuck looking for used product, or I should say, you know, what's in the private hands. This one's in real good shape. It's real clean. Runners are real clean, and it's got 30-pound injectors in it right now. So this is kind of a nice, and now as far as I know, you could take this lower intake on your 351 based engine and pretty much bolt any upper manifold we see over here right on top of it. If you want to use EGR, just be careful, or you know, look ahead that you're buying something that flows through the lower into the upper, like we went over with the upper intakes over there. But that's the only single 5.8 I have out right now. And when it comes to the lowers, there are some differences with the Explorer lower, such as, and actually this 93 Cobra one's got it too. Well, this is painted black like the upper, and now that I'm looking closer at it, this might be an Explorer lower. Either that, or when Ford sold these as a set, they gave you a blocked off intake air temperature sensor bung right here. So for anyone that's putting it in a 94, 95, the air intake temperature sensor was in the air induction system, so this wouldn't be tapped out. But if you're using like a Foxbody based wiring system, you're going to have to install this, and I would suggest installing it where the factory originally put it. I've seen people that have drilled them into other places in the intake system. It's going to read, that's for sure, but is it going to read where, you know, the computer is set up to correctly make the adjustments? This reads 180 degrees, and you put it in the air temperature, put it in your air intake system, and it only reads 160 degrees. Yeah, the computer will make a calculation, but it's expecting to read from right here. As I'm looking at these two intakes right next to each other, so this one here is opened up for that air intake temperature sensor and drilled out, but there's also some, this is going to be, is this a, I think this is just for coolant and not the temperature sensor. I'm looking. So I see there's another one over here, even though it's plugged here. So yeah, I'm going to guess that that's our side for the engine coolant temperature sensor, and this might have been a coolant feed. I'm just doing this video kind of on the fly. Like I said, not a lot of homework or anything here to go over the intricacies. I'm just going over like the differences I see as I go over them. This is a ported 302 lower. Huge ports, really big. They were actually opened up beyond the metal and filled. So this is about as big as you, well, it's bigger than you can get, and has been brought back to a workable runners there. So if anybody were interested, it looks like it's basically set up for a Mustang, like a Foxbody. It's got the air intake temperature sensor. It's got all the openings for coolant sensors and coolant flow to the intake. But you've got, so this is the one that does not have the air intake temperature sensor and does not have the coolant access back here. But I'm going to check the part numbers. They look the same. F8, which tells us that's 98 and newer, so that's why I already suspect that it's Explorer intake. F87E 9K461BA, F87E 9K461BA. So those are the same stamped, it looks like, part, but they have completely different holes and access and things like that. So again, before you go buying something, either make sure you buy one that has the access ports that you need, or get ready to get your drill and tap out and make this work for you. So obviously we still have, EGR here in the middle. So I'm going to jump. We've already done the 5.8. I'll jump over here to like a 94, 95. I thought this was a 94, 95 GT lower. Excuse me, 94, 95 Cobra lower. But as I'm looking at it, I see that F8 part number again. So this might just, I don't know what we got here. A BB. So the first two we looked at were a BA, and this is a BB. It looks like everything else in the part number is the same. I'm still not sure what we're looking at, because it doesn't even give access for that air intake temperature sensor. So maybe this is a 94, 95 Cobra. I don't understand the part number. It's an F8 part number. So yeah, doesn't have the provisions, I guess is the word, for those bungs like some of the other intakes did. So I know this is 94, 95 Mustang as far as the fuel rail, but no EGR. It has no bung for the air intake temperature sensor, and with the 94, 95 cars having it in the air inlet, that makes sense that it's not there. What else can we see here? Let's flip it over. A baffle there that I didn't see on some of the other ones. So just kind of interesting that there's so many different options, and this isn't even all of them. This is just a collection I brought out today to take video with, so there's still some other ones out there. And of course there are other uppers that have been produced. I think Comp Cam's made like a polymer plastic one, Downs made one. There's all different kinds. Sheet metal ones I've seen available aftermarket, but we're going with factory parts today. Again, not all stock parts, but factory parts. So now this, I'll guarantee by the part number is, and by the way it looks, I'm not going to guarantee anything, because we just looked at that brown one and it looks like a Cobra 94, 95. And so does this. This part number is F4Z. Sorry about that. Ran out of memory. Had to delete a couple things, but I'm right back. So yeah, I'm trying to compare this 94 part number here with the 94, I thought, Cobra looking manifold over there. So that one still boggles me a little bit. But here's a part number for everyone. It's the F4ZE 9K461-BC. I'm going to see if these are the exact same. Yes, F4ZE 9K461-BC. So without going to Google and looking this up myself, I'm going to assume these might be the manifold, the lower manifold, that if you went back to Ford and bought like a Ford Racing GT-40 tubular, I'm going to assume that this would be the manifold they provided you with. Or it could be a 94, 95 Cobra. You guys can comment down below if you know exactly what these are. I've seen a lot of people online talk about the firing order and how important it is to identify a manifold if it has the firing order on it. 1, 3, 7, 2, 6, 5, 4, 8. So there are two of these I have. They're very good shape. One just apparently cleaner than the other. And as I look back and forth, I do see some differences in these as well. So I have one here that is tapped for the air intake temperature sensor. Does have the bungs for coolant access. And the one right next to it with the same part number is not drilled out for the air intake temperature sensor. The bungs, or the provisions, are basically there for the coolant access, but they're not drilled out. So it's amazing that we've got so many different, and not just different as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's so many differences even in them with the same part number, which is, it's mind-boggling. It's hard for me to say this is that and this is the way that they always came, just because we've had so many differences in our journey today. But there's a look at some of the current products that I'm making available. Hopefully you were entertained and maybe got a little value out of this. Just cool your jets, keep your brakes on when you're going to buy these parts. Make sure you know ahead of time whether you want EGR, you don't want EGR, if you need an air intake temperature sensor or if you don't, if you want to have the 94, 95 style of intake. There are elbows out there, so I don't want anybody with an SN95 or an elbow type inlet system to think that you cannot use any of the other uppers on a 94 or 95. You can buy the aftermarket elbow. That would adapt right about here. It adapts these, we'll call them Foxbody style intakes, adapts them and leaves this surface here where you can bolt on your throttle body. So any of these fit 94, 95. I would say these don't fit 93 and older. But I do appreciate your time. This is Josh at Encore, the Mustang Parts Warehouse. If you're interested in any of these parts, you can send a comment below. Try and email me. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as more cool stuff like this and products and such are going to be made available, along with a little entertainment and a little education. So thank you very much, and hope to hear from you and see you again soon. Thanks a lot, everybody.